Chapter 3 The Goulash. In the humble town of Pakesley, while Zenora played with their cats Arius and Dolly, Marius made his infamous goulash, perfecting his craft, or mischief. The two have been together for 7 happy years together and have had the cats together for the better part of a decade. Zenora had forgiven his every fault, but still he continued to miss the mark from time to time. He never let anything keep him down and would get up and walk further, soldiering on the best he could. Marius has a different theory on the matter entirely. In his view on the matter, their marriage began that first Christmas holiday when they had taken the holy gifts up to the altar at St. Mirren's Christmas Eve, and then on Boxing Day started a cruise, let's say, of the inland canals of Scotland, which Miss Zenora called the worst experience of her life, a slow trip to nowhere, endless piddle down the dirt-pitched freezing watercourses, easily the most tiresome and ridiculous thing I've ever had the displeasure to endure, although she admitted seeing the northern coast was all right. But Marius thought those nights were the nights for revelers. It was in those days Zenora had taught him about paprika, and still in these days as he added more paprika and onions, tomatoes, and garlic, all the while the macaroni pasta was on boil. He remembered the days they went to the shops together, and he showed her the old ones amongst the coins of her change. The days they'd order fish and chips with curry, living across from the corner of an acropolis, where an apple tree hung its fruit over the 8-foot wall. Over those on the sidewalk, they sat at the train or bus station together, everything together, like a best friend joined at the hip, adventuring the Hyperbjornia when, in those days, there weren't even up there yet, or staring out of their east window together to see the shadows drag on the walls that wrapped around the necropolis in the evening, and the wind cried down the street as a couple of apples fell and bruised themselves. The world outside had changed into a desperate wasteland. The wars of the Bjornia were ever raging, and the narwhals and great whales fought men and met to fight for their lives in the warming waters and sharp rocks. The great seals and seal lions, the walruses, all fighting man for the newest lands and lanes. The North had become the new Silk Road. The mice and the frogs had not been able to determine Europe in either the First or Second 10 Years' War, and now were thinking of attacking each other once again. "What's in the paper, love?" Marius asked. "Another 300% tariff on paprika," Zenora said. "Traitors, it's treason, treason," Marius said. "All right, love, if wishing makes it so. It's times like these I saw coming. I have to admit it, you did. It's that hog, it is." "Yes, dear. Packing away all the spices through the years. It's illegal to hoard it now, you know. It's illegal to give it out. I'm an outlaw, my love, an outlaw," Marius said, perturbed, and began shaking his hands to his sides. "They're going to get me locked up. Those grocers will spill any secret. They've been waiting for the day to ruin me. Now, dearie, that kind of thinking won't get you anywhere. There's not a soul who would remember, because I had made you stop buying so much so many years ago. Most of it you brought out of the country. Had to smuggle it, didn't you, love?" "If you were on your own," Zenora said, "they'd come knocking on your door first thing." "Aye, there it is. But they still might. What are we to do with all the spice? Give it away. It's illegal. No one is supposed to have it, love. It's gonna be impossible. Throw it in the bin. Good heavens, never. Let's start putting extra in the parish food. The idea clicked in Marius's head. He would simply cook more goulash and give away the spice in his food. He kissed his wife, being his guiding light. He had taken over full duties for the cafeteria at Our Lady of Succor after the candle mass. The death of the pastor's sister, Sister Rosetta, had caused an undeniable rift at the cafeteria where she had served the Lord for 38 years, but Marius was the first to volunteer. Though he had taken over somewhat reluctantly on account of he basically had 5 meals he knew how to cook: goulash, traditional Hungarian goulash, chicken goulash, vegetarian goulash, and fish goulash for Lenten Fridays. The second week was the exact copy of the first week, the third was a copy of the second, and so on. Then, upon Zenora's advice, he began to overspice the goulash. At first, the students seemed like they couldn't handle the change, but it woke them up like a kick to the eye. Zenora now only seldom took upon her cape and went out in her capacity as a private detective. She had recently proven a certain glitter, which appeared in the tale so called The Jesting One he didn't like on purpose just as they were passing underneath. Zenora had a mouth none of her adversaries could withstand nor contradict. She also had doubts upon the whole hitherto mentioned Bell enterprise her husband had casted both their lots into. Arius was resting upon her chest. He was her teddy bear, but he wasn't afraid to show his disappointment whenever she started to get ready to go out. It's only for a few hours, Booba. To check on Daddy, she said, easing his pains. Dolly was the baby girl of the family. Whenever Zenora would baby talk Arius, Dolly was quick on the scene to correct the error and insist she was the only baby in the family. So Zenora would say, "Who's my baby girl? Such a pretty girl." She came to her husband's aid, but when Zenora came to help him cook and offered a few new dishes, taking a break from her private practice of the detection of crimes, she directed him where to go and was his spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical guide. She began to see his true world as one seeing someone through the lens of the cross of Jesus. It was concluded that he was better fitted than anyone else to serve food from a trough, or as Zenora called him, the premier ladler. He had a big dipper and a little dipper to portion to the students and was all smiles at his work with his wife by his side. They called him the Great Bear. After Zenora steadied the stomachs of all those who attended the church for lunch, the children of Our Lady of Succor began to remark their parents were too lazy to do the housework. Every house had fallen into disrepair, or so it seemed under Britannium. But the children were wide awake and aware of the things going on in the world. Zenora and Marius continued to work completely unaware that they were no less than co-insurers of no less than a culinary revolution. They were the Paprika Rebels. He read the tombstones in the churchyard and thought about the bygone people from ages past. Although he didn't think death itself was romantic, but a life well lived. And if you had to die like that, well, he had given his best years to his best woman he had ever met. He was continually beside him as all these years. And for the world, she only asked a lot of him in his best years. And he gladly gave all, for all was all he had to give. And Zenora always appreciated that. He was a wounded man in many ways, tender-hearted and easily upset, but he so entirely and tenderly loved her. Usually a nap could cure just about anything. Arius was the same way, and they liked to take their naps together at times. He walked through the old churchyard graveyard and said, "These two graves are big enough for a horse." That night he seemed perturbed. Zenora was worried about him because he spoke about a steamboat. The Bell fiasco was apparently about to preclude from however far into the mix it already was. Marius had been greatly afeared of what the government was doing in the country to the immigrants. He knew Zenora was thinking about his actions, that things were not adding up, but he was not the best with coming out with the truth. If cornered, he would expose all. He had set his mind to going down to the river that night to pour out all his spices. As he fumbled around the pantry, Zenora cornered him in a conversation. "Dear, what is this bell caper you alluded to?" "Oh, that, dear. The church took down its bells. I'm supposed to take them down to the river and find this man with a horse. Seems like a lot of trouble." "Well, it's a worthwhile job, you see. I could just about name my price." "What did you name?" "Canada." "You what?" "And a horse, apparently. When I asked for Canada, the man said I had to take his horse with me. He thought it'd be a better life for him if I took him there." "Dear, I'm going to pack a bag, take the cats." "It's true, love," Marius stormed. "And just tonight I was going to the river." "Canada, that's a laugh. And then what, the river?" "No." "Yes, I have to scout it out, and well, I'm throwing away all the spice." "Marius, how do you think that'll look?" "It's dark, no one will see." "That's exactly when they're looking for someone like you to go to the river to incriminate themselves." "I'm liable to be hanged for it, Zenora." "They have me for hoarding and distributing, both of us, but we have the tickets out. I'm just giving the man the last two bells, and he will get the transferred them himself. We'll take a steamship to Canada. You, the cats, and me, and well, horse and all." "The horse?" "I gave my word, my love." Chapter 4: Hyperbjornia and Antbjornia. Bjorn equals bear and Bjork equals birch tree. That's the way London Jack heard it all right. The great Bjorn in the North Torn ski. London Jack figured that the penguins had long since migrated away from the bear to Antbjornia. The Hyperborea the Mediterraneans knew about, London Jack thought, was this Bjornia? Above the great river? This England had rivers, and there's rivers north as well. Lefty mentioned Canada again, but he thought over the whole enterprise. It was a natural progression, an arc. On the other hoof, he considered his debt paid, and Lefty could make off in Canada by himself, one hand and all. Then again, there were graves in Scotland as well as Canada. Then he thought about leaving Lefty and if he would miss him. He looked over at him. He did take care to brush, feed, and water him. The only difference between a horse and a dog is a horse lets the man know it's just a job. The dog yearns desperately for friendship, a morbid equanimity to be used in such a way that was at the cost of one's dignity, self-respect, and physical health. London Jack wouldn't act that way for Lefty or anyone, although he wished he was a dog some days so he could be nearer to Trinity. But we are what we are, thought London Jack. How a rat, how a whale, a dog. A horse lets man know it's just a job because the companionship becomes abusive in the form of neglect as much as direct harm. London Jack knew the world, and he knew man, and he knew what was in the heart of man, even though he did think Lefty was a good man in many ways. He only would indulge in the nostalgia of Trinity and not make anything of his future with Lefty. He was too afraid of getting let down again. He had a Trinity-sized hole in his horse heart, and he couldn't allow it to get bigger. He thought he should keep it the same size in case she ever came back. Lefty could sense when London Jack wanted to be left alone. That horse has a melancholy liver at times, he said aloud. London Jack basically agreed and didn't hold it against Lefty. Soon Lefty began to talk to himself as if he was a professor of history at the university of wherever they were, dancing in circles around the tomb of Cyrus the Great, the man who did build the second temple, the Persian, the temple that Jesus knew, Cyrus the Persian. Let's allow him his plot of land. There'd be no Persia without the Medes. I, London Jack? London Jack smiled, but he didn't say anything. The Assyrian fought but a few minor raids into the land of the Medes. Lefty paused for effect. Receiving few horses for their effort. London Jack thought of the great horses of men. What was the name of Cyrus's horse? The great Nicaean horse of the past that hunted. The horse of Darius was also a Nicaean that saw the great Bucephalus. And where was the tomb of Bucephalus, the ox-headed one? Was it better for a horse to have the heads of lions or the heads of oxen? London Jack pondered, but he thought horses should just have horse heads. London Jack wondered if Lefty would be remembered by history. Their escape was infamous, no doubt. He was a resourceful man for getting out of prison with one hand, and he used that to his advantage, didn't he? Got locked up in the infirmary when he knew there was going to be a riot that one time. Well above that, he wore careful, deliberate, measured, respectful, earnest, distant, sometimes jovial, sometimes ate to his fill, but would still be considered quite thin, a runner as a young man, unmovable once decided upon a path and usually right, walks circumspectly, liberal, egalitarian, prayed before his meals as a boy, doesn't go to church, but has since served the church every day on a mission of preserving their bells, which would get him thrown into prison easily, and it's amazing it hasn't happened already. As the barge glided down the canal, London Jack thought went to Trinity. She had a parable about the eagle and the crow. The crow was jealous of the eagle and would even dare to pluck its feathers. When there are a few crows, they will harass the eagle together for as long as the eagle stays at their level. The crows will even be so bold to jump on the back of the eagle. The eagle in turn wants to fight back, but it cannot handle 3 or 4 crows pursuing it at once. The eagle can only fly higher to where the crows cannot reach. But how would the penguins escape crow? Now London Jack felt like a Macedonian ox amongst Grecian urns. The day was full on its side, noon that is. After they reached the next town, they reached the harbor and could unload the bells with a tackle and pulley by the docks. The next town was called Corby, according to Lefty, but the harbor warn't in Corby no more. Corby Harbor was actually next to Corby on account of some story. And as our two heroes came through the hills of the main source river, they heard explosions. Then they saw the marks of industry. When they got to the river's ledge, they could see the landscape across dotted with machines and fences and roads. The earth lay open in a maze of descending pits, with great plumes of steam and gases escaping upwards from the loud hissing and moans of these underground caverns with the cries of lost souls. The whole place was horrendous. Far in the distance they saw long infinite lines of marching penguins, each carrying a mining implement of some kind. The penguins seemed to be working themselves very orderly up and down the spiraling myriad of pyramid stair steps into the quarry with the different colors of the leftover rubble stones they had quarried. These penguins, they made a mosaic of Joseph Stalin upon the hills, Stalinists to boot. These quarrymen penguins really had stripped the earth of any semblance of its idyllic nature. Lefty and London Jack were glad to be away from that scene as they came to the docks to unload their pig iron, as it were, though they did have a fair bit of that and all. But soon as they could get to the local blacksmith, who was a smuggler for the church, they brought up the iron and the brass, and they were much closer to being through with their bell chasing. Yes, everything wore a rat, but it don't matter what you are, it matters what you're going to be, Lefty concluded, some bygone thought from ages past. Even penguins wore rats. London Jack thought about the penguins and this Lord Crow. He had read his poetry in the London Times recently, and it never impressed him. He didn't even consider the man a lunatic, though his devotion to the moon was unquestionable. But the people questioned him because he forced his hand into asking such inane questions. It was nearing the end of April, and the penguins had continually worked in the dark where it was winter, but now they were beginning to have conversations where the light broke through the ventilation shafts where it were summer. The newspapers had been smuggled in, and they thought it were quite odd that there were no mention of this Britannium they are mining or their efforts. Surely they were employment by the Prime Minister should be recognized for helping the country. When they asked simple questions, the security around the mines had tightened. The government's paprika tariffs on paprika had also come to harm the penguins, for the countries with these spices also had the higher quality of fish. But now they were only getting the fish from Crow Bay, and it tasted like mud. They shut down the mines for a day and went to bargain with Lord Crow himself. They all sat out in his yard and began to chat, their voices incessant, ongoing. Crow couldn't concentrate on his moon to write yet another poem. He didn't dare leave for the Cupric beaches. He began to give in to the negotiations and lost the mystery in the process. He had to call the sinister Prime Minister. These Stalinists of yours want me to dredge the entire bay as some sort of restoration effort so they can get better quality of fish, Crow complained over the phone. Dredge the bay, old man, Hogg said. We have nothing to worry about. Have you seen the latest pass in Parliament? The hangings, Crow muttered. Yes, we brought them back. For terrorists, you see, but only foreign terrorists, Hogg boasted. Very liberal of us. Sir, the dredgings is what we need to talk about. They want to restore the river. Oh, yes, well, I'll extend it as an olive branch to those greenies. Tell them to clean up the Crow Bay. And so they began to dredge up the bay and pick stones away from the old riverbed and dig a canal. The townsfolk were hired to dig a giant ditch, penny a day, but also a loaf of bread, 16 ounces of tobacco, 5 beers, a block of cheese, cigarettes, and a beer. This got the Stalinists back to work, But they noticed they never got such treatment. And the idea of a clean water project in New Canal sounded like a promising future, but all the pollution for these cleaning projects was going into their living quarters. So they sharpened their beaks. As Crow readied his quill one night, with his inkwell under his arm, he set out for the Cupric beaches. There he composed another inane poem about the moon. Upon returning to his yard, he noticed the light was not on, and only part of the moon shone. He heard a rustling, and then in the shadows of the cypress trees, a baby rabbit ran out. It was darting away from a murder of crows pecking at its legs and vulnerable belly. The mother rabbit also ran out to try and save her young, but it was taken away, screaming in the air. Dreadful, dreadful, muttered Crow. What a veritable thing to do. Then it were as the woods around his home did grow legs and choke around his mansion. The shadows gripped his estate as the penguins secretly crept upon his property. As Crow came to the landing of his home, he thought it queer that Brunton had not met him. The devil is that man? Yard light can't be out, Crow muttered as he searched for his keys. In an instant, the penguins were upon him. They used their beaks like daggers of the senators. Stalinists! Stalinists! That night, Lefty was telling London Jack how they were going to trade the next set of bells. You're going to go with this couple from Pakesley, London Jack, Lefty said. It's the end of our travels, but you'll go on for more, many more. That's the last of me, though. Think I'll retire here in Scotland. They never bother coming all the way up here looking for you. Well, I hope you'll enjoy Canada. London Jack went to bed that night and had a dream. He woke up and was back in the outdoor stables in Millbank Prison next to another horse with his front leg in a wooden splint. The quarter-hour bells began ringing somewhere. Two men approached and went to the horse with the wooden splint. All right, wall-eyed Fred, said the guard. We got to help stand up old Lefty here for the day. Which one, sir? The one with its leg in a splint. Old London Jack there will get up on his own accord. London Jack lazily looked around with his large, soft, beautiful horse eyes. Across the way, he saw a giant white pig in a pen and a crow perched atop a roof with coxcomb shingles. The rest he must have imagined.